Corda, and to thank Deputy Tully for the work she'd put into this motion, and to say, Minister, in my work, what always strikes me when I meet a parent of a child with additional needs, well, there are a number of things. It's the exhaustion, the frustration, the challenge of dealing with a diagnosis that can be quite difficult. It's a learning process. You have a diagnosis that you didn't know anything about, that you have to understand better, understand the terminology around it, empower your wider family about it, and then you have to become almost if not a full-time, certainly a part-time campaigner to wage war against the state. And that's what's so disappointing about it. If you live your life as a citizen of this republic, you do everything you feel is right, you pay your taxes, you obey the law, you live a good life, and then all of a sudden you have a child in your care that you loved deeply, and you can see that the state is coming up short. And that leads to a huge level of resentment within a family, and they can feel as if nobody is really speaking for their child, caring for their child, advocating for their child, or empowering their child. And it does lead to incredible issues within the family unit. I just come across these families who are just absolutely exasperated, exhausted. And it feels as if wherever you turn in Irish society, other people are stepping up. So your average GAA club is taking on, sections within their GAA club, the All-Star movement to encourage children with additional needs to play Gaelic games. I know of initiatives to make towns and village centres around the country autism friendly. We're trying to encourage that in Raheny and Donamead in my own constituency. There seems to be an awareness and an understanding amongst lobby groups to listen better to groups such as I Am, Inclusion Ireland and others. There seems to be a uniformity of approach to empower, to understand, to listen to families, to Children's Ombudsman as well today. But the one area where you feel as if there is a lack of stepping up, unfortunately, is the state. To have, as has been reported today, and the Ombudsman himself was quoted on making remarks about this, that more than 34,000 children are waiting over a year for community health services. And that is a stunning statistic. And when you meet people who are working in the HSE, they speak of the retention and recruitment issue, and you've referenced that yourself in your own remarks. However, when we have brought forward suggestions ourselves in the Labour Party last April, we brought forward a private member's motion, which again was accepted by government for the state to bring forward a national autism strategy. Now, you haven't opposed this motion this evening, and you didn't indeed oppose our motion last year. But it's the action, unfortunately, that we feel is lacking. I go to services in my own constituency. I go to Abacus School in Kilbarrack, and I see the conditions that the children are expected to learn under. And I meet the parents, and again, they feel as if, once again, for whatever reason, their children are not at the top of the political priority list. So, Minister, what I would say to you is that what I understand, you say that this isn't a resources issue, there are other issues. This is not a new problem. This has been going on for a number of years, trying to get access to school places. Issue in my own constituency again. Parents being handed a list of schools by the SENO, the Special Educational Needs Organiser. Again, stepping away from the responsibility to find the school place. Having a parent having to go to school after school after school after school. 17 schools in one instance to try and find a school place for their child. A school place being suggested for a child in Drogheda, even though the child lives in Donamead. Absolutely unbelievable type of expectation on parents who, again, are coming to terms with a diagnosis and terminology and challenges within their family that is absolutely exhausting them. So what you would expect, and this is what I think we can agree on, Minister, that we should have a vision of a republic that any child who has a diagnosis, or any child who has a need, or any child that has a challenge, that the state would envelop that child with such compassion and that family with such empowerment that the family will feel proud to live in this country. And they could say to anybody they know from any other country, do you know something? When I got that diagnosis, and even though it was challenging for us, we got assessment of need immediately. We got interventions immediately. The school were absolutely resourced to accept my child and to build up my child. The community in which I live knew exactly how to interact with me and my family. It was something that we eventually began to celebrate because we learned so much from our child. That could be the vision that collectively we could all achieve. But what happens is you get a diagnosis and it's a devastating moment in your life because you know that the state is not going to help you. And it is not a small decision for a family to end up in the courts. Many of these families have never stepped inside a courtroom before. It's not something that comes naturally to them. But how depressing must it be to walk into a courtroom, to see the symbol of the country over the judge's head and to know that this republic is absolutely letting you down. So this is why last April, when we put forward our motion on a national autism strategy, what we were trying to do was to bring all the different elements of government collectively into one movement, if you like, to make things better. So families would feel as if there's a strategy there that they could point towards. And this is why, Minister, and again, this is a political point. This is why, when we have arguments over tax and spend in these chambers, and ministers from government will justify tax cuts to the tune of €500 million, I'm always thinking of these families when that happens. I'm always fundamentally thinking of these families when that happens. Because, again, you may say it's not about resources, it's not about funding, but it does come down to that on some level. It does come down to that on some level. So, Minister, what we're saying here is that this is not a new problem. This is not something that has just arrived today. This is something that I've been dealing with for at least 3 years. What I want you to do is to look again at the National Autism Strategy, to make a commitment that we can drive down these numbers, and to say to the families of this country, you don't need to be exhausted, you don't need to be campaigners, because this state will absolutely support you and empower you. And when it comes to the school in Kilbarrack, of which I spoke, the Advocate School in Kilbarrack, that is not a type of scenario, a type of conditions that you or any member of government would feel would be acceptable. What the Ombudsman for Children is pointing out, what the opposition are pointing out, what lobby groups are pointing out, what other agencies are stepping up to, I mentioned GA clubs and I mentioned community initiatives. They all see across Irish society, the value in understanding and empowering. It is deeply frustrating when the state does not appear to understand it too.